Hello, I'm Eagle Gardens 1 on Instagram, and this is fucking Talking Shit with Eagle, episode 838. Very much looking forward to this episode. Got a lot of respect for this gentleman right here, Aaron the Grower. How you
Hmm.
doing, my friend?
Thank you, dude. That respect is mutual. Um, I'm doing pretty good, man. I'm surviving the shitstorm of policy that Oklahoma's thrown our way, and just making a go of this commercial cannabis thing, dude.
Well, as I've told you before, I do have a lot of respect for you. You've been at this quite a while. You've dumped a lot of information into the community, and I don't know, the whole living off the grid thing, and moving to Oklahoma and forging your own way. I got a lot of respect for everything you've done in the past. So, how's it been?
Thank,
What you been up to, my friend?
thank you, bro. Yeah, I should give you like an update. So, like the last time we spoke, I think I had just gotten to Oklahoma.
Hmm.
Um, so we're like man, so it's been pretty like straightforward, steady sailing, except for the policy changes. So there's been a lot of um, mandates and stupid stuff where they said, okay, go ahead and build your building. No codes, no permits necessary, nothing like that. We went ahead and built our building to like agricultural spec, which is like, you can have exposed Romex, which is like just that plastic sheath wire. And you can do a couple of other things that you can't do in a hazardous factory, which is our new zoning regulation. So now all grows are hazardous factories. So that means we've had to completely remodel the entire grow. We had to rewire. So all that Romex, we're talking 700 or 800 feet of Romex had to be replaced with MC, which is metal clad, hardcore wire. And we had to paint all of our spray foam with not incandescent paint. It's like I think that's what it's called. It's fire retardant paint. And so every bit of profits that we like should be folding back on the business has been for the last year spent on this remodel, and we just finished it. And we're about to take clones tomorrow for our first run since the remodel. And man, it's been a shitstorm. And we're producing some of the best cannabis in the state, and it's been this hard for us to survive. So I can't imagine for anybody trying to get started, or that sometimes has a mediocre run. Um, I can't imagine what how hard it would be to survive.
I don't doubt you aren't uh, producing some of the finest cannabis in the state. That's without question, brother. Uh, I guess with that being said, that's a good lead into what is some of the finest cannabis going around in Oklahoma? What is in the garden?
Well, I'll tell you what, there's some really good growers out here because of the way that they set up the laws originally. So we got a lot of like California's mom and pops that couldn't put up with the California bullshit when they switched away from the patient-based system and to a recreational based system. And then we got a lot of Colorados, you know, uh, people who didn't want to deal with the like THC limits. So we've got a lot of really talented growers here, and they're all. And one thing about Oklahoma is everybody's really nice. So if you come from somewhere like New York or something where people are more curt, um, you kind of like have to change to fit in. I've lived in a lot of different places, but moving here, it's like you kind of have to be nice. So everybody's really nice, and every top shelf grower you're gonna meet is just, you know, uh, most of them are top class dudes. or females. And um, in my garden, so our next run is going to be, man, I'm really excited about the next run. It's something. So we've spent the last 2 years growing all kinds of shit, and there's been certain strains that have sold really well and just been kind of crowd favorites. We're going to grow all those strains this round, and we only do about 7 or 8 strains, but it's going to be blue cookies, thin mints, peanut butter breath, Sunset McMac, which is the one we hunted here. It's a Sunset Mac crossed with Mac from G-Paw Packing, or G-Paw Ken. His name is Ken too. I don't know how he phrases his Instagram. Um, and then we're going to run Exoneration #1 from my friend Rob at Seattle Chronic Seeds. He crossed Gary Payton, OG Kush Breath 2.0, and Root Beer Rolex. And man, every pheno of that had like notes of those three. So nice. So that, and then a truffle cake from it's bred by In-House, but I got it from my buddy Jordan at Growcast. I just dropped a podcast with him actually. Um, really good guy. Recommend everybody check out his stuff too. And I think that covers it. I think that's like all 7. But yeah, all hitters, dude. 9-weekers, fast finishers. We're trying to get back on track after this colossal bullshit. What's been going on with you, man? Been seeing you running some marathons.
That's been the main objective lately is running. I've been getting back to I had to take a little hiatus from growing for a minute. I'm getting back to growing my own cannabis anyway. And yeah, doing the marathon. I'm training for a marathon in July, hopefully the end of July. Currently kind of sitting back a little bit. I had a shin splint. So kind of trying to recover from a shin splint right now, and that's no joke, man. But
That shit's
other
painful, dude.
uh yeah, other than that, man, just been that's been the focus lately is that and the other channel. I've been kind of documenting the running and the training a little bit on I do it Run Eagle Run is the other channel, so we kind of like
Okay.
do some like live like when I'm out doing 15, 12 miles, so I'm will run. We kind of do a little bit of filming. I live on a lake up here in northern Michigan, so we'll like document some of the runs around the lake and stuff like that during the training.
Do you get stoned before you do all that?
Yes, I do. Yes, I do. And
Good for you.
that's some of the beauty about it is I smoke a lot. I smoke a
Uh-huh.
whole lot, and I don't feel it holds me back at all. At
No.
all. I mean, last year when I kicked this all off, my first race was last year, last August. And I was lucky enough to be able to be a judge for one of the local cups. So I had went through my judge's kit all week long, had to go down, drop off my papers, and then hung out at that cup all day long from like noon till 12. Got about 4 or 5 hours sleep, and then went downtown Flint and ran a 10-mile race with a medical cannabis bracelet on. Then I smoked all the way to the race, so I know I smelled like weed. And then went back to the cup after the race and partied like a normal fucking day. So I don't, this shit don't hold us back at all. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Well, you
I'm
look
happy.
great, dude, and I'm really happy to hear that you're absolutely crushing life. I got to check out your new channel and support that.
Well, I appreciate what you're doing because you're crushing it in one of my other passions. You know what I mean? You some of the flower you're producing that I've seen on your Instagram is absolutely beautiful and organic. You know what I mean? That's so how easy has the organic thing been, most
We've
people think it's not scalable and all that good stuff. Let's go there first. I got
Really
lost.
good question, dude. That's a really good question. It is scalable. It's not easy though, and you have to fine tune every every detail that you thought could kind of could float along. Has to be completely fine tuned. And so I'll give you some examples. One really good example is phosphorus. So we like to run really low phosphorus in our soil. When I do my soil tests, I look for really low phosphorus compared to what like you would find in like a salt-based medium or something. And we do that because it's better for the earth, but also because we've seen an antagonistic relationship between sulfur and phosphorus. So when you drive phosphorus down and you drive sulfur up, the plant will take in a lot of sulfur, and sulfur is what builds most terpenes, especially acrid terpenes, so stank foot and rotten breath and stuff like that. Um, so we were playing with those bottom thresholds of phosphorus, and like when you're in a home grow, you can drive phosphorus really low because it doesn't really, the plant isn't asking for more phosphorus than it can find. But in a commercial setting, when you're supplementing CO2 up to like 1,500 parts per million, the plants are demanding an incredible amount of phosphorus. Um, we had a few strains that would burn, like their leaves would look like they were burnt, necrotic and dead looking and shit, all the way down to the bud. And then we would harvest. And we were seeing that like a couple of harvests in a row. And I knew it was the phosphorus. I just wasn't sure how to fix it. So I started lowering the CO2. That helped a little bit. But ultimately, there were certain strains that just couldn't continue past week 6 with that low phosphorus. And this is just to say that like scaling up living soil, um, depending on the things you do to scale up, and CO2 being one of them, supplemental CO2. So we have a few strains like East Coast Sour Diesel, Super Silver Haze, any of the OGs, really green weed, long term flowering strains. Um, at like week 6, they will just like die with the amount of phosphorus I've been giving the other plants. So we had 2 or 3 runs where we could not figure out how to get phosphorus to these plants without lowering the CO2 and lowering production of the room in general. And so I found like an organic liquid phosphorus, liquid fish bone meal, and it hobbles them along to get to the end, but I still kind of like don't have a perfect solution for it. So we're still kind of working our way through it. But it's definitely the phosphorus. We've seen improvements with phosphorus additives halfway through, but now it's about planting the room in such a way that the phosphorus heavy plants will all be near each other because everything's in 3 big soil beds. So they share a lot of the same space. So if I'm going to run East Coast and Super Silver and uh, like one of the exoneration long flowering strains, then we're going to have to put them together and feed liquid phos at week 5, week 6. And then, so that's like one detail that we had to fine tune that is just not the same with home growing. And another one was the dry and cure process. So when you're like hanging a couple of plants, your room isn't really overcome with moisture, your dry room. But when you have 100 plants, all of a sudden, like it's raining in your room, essentially, like into the air. Like it is so wet. And so you've got to figure out how much dehumidification. It's the dehumidification is like exponentially greater. Like you can just throw a little home unit, a little home dehumidifier for portable dehumidifier for your home grow, but you've got to have another plan for shoving 100 plants into a 150 square foot room. So those are just a couple of examples. And so one thing we've done is, obviously heavy dehumidification, but driving the temperature really down in the dryer room um, helps the dehumidifier pull more moisture out of the air. So you can make things work better by working with temperature because they affect each other.
So, what are you? I'm curious on this versus because it sounds like you do still do go with a longer term cure or dry. What in your opinions, some of the benefits of going longer like that? And I guess to tack on to that, do you try to leave? I know moisture is always a problem when we're drying, but do you try to actually leave a little bit more leaf on there for like the drying process? I think of it more like this nowadays. It isn't the drying process, it's the dyeing process through the
Uh-huh.
long, cure or the longer dry like that. So do
That's
you
right.
more moisture in there for a longer dyeing process for it to
It's
kind
not
of
that
final change?
it's a slow dry is the result of low temperatures mostly. Um, Believe it or not, if a well-preserved product, so if you're drying your product properly, your humidity is actually not as important as your temperature. So your humidity can fluctuate between like, when you first put your plants in there, you can drop your humidity down to friggin' 40%. But after a day or two, you want to probably have it between 50 and 60%. But that's still like a pretty big fluctuation. Um, if you go below that, it's not a big deal. If you go too cold, like you're not going to destroy anything really seriously. If you get warmer than that, the weed starts to age. It's not that big of a deal. But so oh man, what was your first question? So you said, is a long, do I prefer a long dry and cure?
Yeah, why a longer dry versus, some of the there's
Oh, that's
newer
right. Yeah.
techniques out, the Canitrol, there's quick drying methods these days, so why do you
I'm
kind
old
of
school, bro. I like to I truly believe that like the volatile terpenes, they off gas. So if you're trying to grow A plus product and you put A plus product in a room that's 63 degrees, that is gonna be A or A minus when it's done drying. If it's below 60 degrees, and this is just the difference between that top 5% of product, really. Like home grower may not care so much to that's kind of what I was talking about. Like if your temperature goes above 60 degrees a little bit, it's not that big of a deal. Um, but it's over 60% humidity and you'll get bud rot. But only in the first 2 days. So I know I'm jumping around all over the place, but all of this is to say that there's a long dry is the byproduct of all of these other little details. How long it takes to dry, to be honest, I don't even care. If it takes 7 days, like great, then it's good to go. But what we see is with really dense bud that was grown well, it takes longer to dry. So that's a really strong correlation that people don't realize. If you grow really tough, tight weed, you're going to have a longer dry process period. Um, and then all of those other things. So the reason we like to see it is because terpene preservation. That's really what it's all about, is those flavors. And once they start the nuances of the flavors, if we know scientifically that they start to off gas at 62 degrees, then um, we want to keep our temperature below that, right? So And that makes for a longer dry process because a higher temperature ushers moisture movement. That makes sense.
It does. It does. You know, I see the drying process in so many different ways these days. Um, it's amazing how we in the final play phases of the flower, we're kind of playing, little alchemist there. So nowadays, I kind of consider that longer drying process that you're describing is kind of more the way I said there is more, it's more of a longer of a dying process.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that I believe that plant through them phases of struggling, knowing it's dying, just like a cut grass or something, it's putting out a little bit different hormone, maybe changing it, and on top of that, like you're talking, there's a little bit of them terpenes. See, this is where the drying thing I like. All right. Let me see if you're open to at least listen to me on this. Um, I think in that longer drying process, and furthermore with a cure, you're talking about like individualizing or keeping the terps. I see them more of a blending experience and them kind of sleeping into the flower to make a new terpene or more steady terpene profile to where
So
now I see these flash dryers, the canitrol and stuff like that being a quicker preservation method and more representation of live resin or what it would be fresh pick. You have a wider variety. That's when you get the that's something to exhale through I get a little something else there. I think you get that with the more like the quicker flasher where the longer term dryer, where you're going through a little bit different phases. And again, these are just theories I'm kicking around in my head. No, papers to back this, but that's the way I
okay,
see it.
let me try and like science that a little bit. So I think what's happening is there's essentially the you take like a cannabinoid or a terpene and it's got two directions it can go. It can age poorly or it can mature into what you're talking about and then age poorly. You froze up. I don't know if I lost you.
I'm still there. It
Okay,
might
you're
be
still there.
bad video, but
Yeah, yep. So with our process, I actually I I kind of feel like you're right in that there's um stages of smell, but they're not any different from what happens, I think, in a canitrol. Other than the potential loss of some of those nuances based on the temperature like theory. Because the canitrol, I think, is at like, or whatever those dry boxes are, like 70 degrees or something.
I believe it's around the sweet spot there. It's
Yeah.
like 70.
And that makes sense for a speed dry. Because let me tell you, when I was growing weed in California and the mountains, and we were drying weed in a shed that was 90 degrees and 30% humidity, you had to check your weed every 30 minutes just to make sure you weren't going to over dry it. But there was definitely a sweet spot. You could get really good dry product out of that if you didn't let it go too long. But somehow the canitrol like keeps it in this, and I can attest that I have smoked weed out of a canitrol that was 3 months old and it tasted fresh as fuck. And I didn't understand it. It's PFM, it's pure fucking magic to me. I really don't get it, but I like the science behind it, behind the actual what's happening to the cannabinoids and the terpenes and all of the other compounds are they're just losing different groups of molecules and which technically transforms them into a new thing. So like it's just like when you decarb your weed, you lose a carboxyl compound, which is like carbon and oxygen. and that just off gases. It evaporates off of the THC, or the THCA becomes. Uh, oh God, I'm gonna get that all fucked up. But yeah, anyway, so that's what happens is you decarb your weed. But that's what happens to all of the compounds is just different things leave, and so they change into something that tastes a little different or smells a little different or has a different effect. Um, that would be that would be the only science I could say that I've seen in terms of like, I don't know if I've seen anything about like, well, I don't know, nothing is really traveling. I guess I'll address that. Like, I don't think anything is moving so much. In the drying process, yes, like you have, but not in the curing process. Because in the drying process and the dyeing process, the plant's still moving juices, right? Yeah, I agree. So, but I could imagine I mean, I could imagine that something is moving, even if it's just based on um fluid dynamics and like how gas just wants to move to where it's not. So like if there's like a gaseous compound that, like, say you have a box of oxygen and you open it up, it's going to spread out because there's less of it over here and there's less of it over here. And that's fluid dynamics. And that's definitely present in the plant. So I could see things moving, but they would have to be really, really small, like a gas.
You don't
Ethylene gas is a
you don't see the plant actually like feeding off of the fan leaves and stuff, pulling moisture and nutrients, and then kind of prolonging the whole dying process there, and
I could see
seeing
that.
maybe some
Yeah. Yeah,
kind
I
of
could
like
see that, but I
different
don't
hormone
leave.
or something at that point,
I'll say this
possibly.
too to answer your other question about the fan leaves. I don't leave a lot of fan leaves on. I will leave fan leaves on like smaller nugs if they're going to dry too fast. I'll leave fan leaves on there. But I haven't seen any necrosis. Like, I haven't seen the leaf that you leave on the plant in the dry room start to become deficient of any nutrients, which makes me think that if it is, it's just a minor amount and for a short period of time. I would have to guess.
Well, I just, and again, this is all in my head and just fun for fun conversation. I
Yeah, I
do
love that theory.
kind I do kind of see it pulling, before you would pull from yourself, you'd pull from, the next easiest spot, and that would be a dying fan leaf or, whatever has, you know what I mean? And again, I understand in your process that you're not necessarily, and I think that's, in some cases, growers tricks, you know what I mean? If you're coming into an extra dry season and you can't necessarily provide extra moisture to slow things down, leaving a little bit of that extra on there is kind of a way to slow the process down. But I do
And
kind of think there's something going on there. I don't know.
I wouldn't be surprised to learn that, honestly, Eagle. Like, I feel like there's probably, look, man, I've said it before and I'll say it again. The plant knows so much more than we know, and so much more than we know about it, for sure. Like, the the plane of consciousness that like we exist on certainly is not the same language that they exist on. And so how could we assume anything, like, with, like, well, how can we anti-assume anything? Like, how can we presume that anything is not true if there's reason to believe that it is? Sort of like with consciousness, like there's no proof that it exists, but like I'm pretty sure I'm conscious, right?
That I love philosophy and to kind of smash those questions like that. That's what cannabis is a beautiful medium for what you're kind of. But I do believe they do communicate in another kind of way and with each other. I've actually seen
Definitely.
stuff lately to where there's proof. as long as, and it isn't not okay, you could have a group of plants and have similar species from what I've seen, and them knowingly signal over here, I need this, and kind of
Yeah.
send it that way.
The
But
wood wide web, have you heard that expression?
I believe I have, yes.
So they've discovered mycelium that can transfer carbon and other minerals and stuff from one dying tree or one like healthy tree to a dying tree. So they did this really cool study where they took these plants inside and put them, I think it was like a soil bed, and they put this mycelium that they live in the forest with, and they put this bag filled with carbon 14 or something, which is like a not natural form of carbon that exists in their like in their environment. And so they introduced carbon 14. It was either 13 or 14. 13 is the normal one, or 14 is the normal one. Whichever one is not the normal one, they introduced to the one tree with a bag. And the tree at the other end of the soil, connected by the mycelium, received and was able to, they measured carbon 14 in that tree, which shouldn't have been available because it was sealed around that tree. So they traced it through the mycelium, boom, into that other tree, which is just crazy.
That stuff is crazy, and I believe we may have seen the same video there that I am kind of referring to.
Yeah.
But it just said it didn't apply to like it could do within certain species, like it was the same type of pine or whatever tree, but it didn't apply to like other plants around
Right.
it. That shit's fascinating. So I guess I got questions. I got questions. But you thought you walked into one. You walked
Okay.
into this one. It popped up along the way. So I do know you to be a very intelligent individual there, and very white paper based, kind of scientific based. But you kind of brought up spirituality and that
Listen,
kind of
I'm
that's
science has brought me to spirituality, bro. Like,
or has organics brought you to
absolutely. This plant, this plant has brought me to spirituality. Um, I don't, I, it's still it's an ongoing journey. So I don't know where I'll land, but I, it has a lot to do with like, honestly, like quantum physics and the fabric of the universe and reality and consciousness and all that stuff, and the double slit experiment, observer effect, all this weird shit that's happening around us has me feeling like um religion of all religions like are trying to fill that question. Why are there these things around us that like we know exist and are real, like how like you feel, like you get a feeling, you think about your friend and then he calls, like there's real shit happening, we know, but like we're just looking for an answer, and I'm just looking for an answer, I think. So that's where I'm at spiritually. But yeah, I think that the plant connects us very spiritually.
that's what Bob Marley always said, right? And opened our mind spiritually to everything else around us. And I
Yeah.
do think that's true. It has me, brother. My evolution with cannabis is ever changing. As and I found this out later in my journey too. Our relationship with THC in general, or the plant, how our body reacts, changes in time with our age. You know what I mean? So the same effects or the way it hit us when we were younger isn't necessarily the way it hits us today because our body has have an evolution, with us. It just totally chemically changes the interaction. But so my journey in with this plant has changed a whole lot. These days, man, as I kind of have dipped more into, being more open-minded to organics and the organic practice, it has opened my mind up spiritually, big time.
Hmm.
Eventually, what opened the door up for me was the whole microbes and shit like that. Since I've that opened that door, the relationship that I see now between us and the plants, the microorganisms that go in the guts, the way things become nutrient available to us, the whole idea of the second mind of the gut biome, and it's fascinating, and I think it's a wild door. It keeps getting deeper and
I
deeper.
I like to think of the gut as like the soil. Like because it's if you get down to the nitty gritty, um, none of the food we consume is digestible by the human body. We are 100% reliant on the microbes in our gut to break down the food for us. We are an organic system, just like the soil and the plant. It's one. If you're doing it right, they are one. You see them as one, just like you see yourself.
That I can definitely relate there for sure. And yeah, that's a funny thing right there all in itself. Just like the soil, it isn't just soil. There's more microbes in a single, spoonful of that dirt than there is actually molecules of the dirt, or or what we'd call
Mm-hmm.
oil or whatever. And that goes the same thing with us, man. There is way more microbes and all that fungus in here than there is DNA, like you brought up there. So again, that's just a matter of temperature of who's running who in that system.
Yeah, yeah.
So
Temperature, pH, availability of nutrients.
but
It's
notice too, we were talking about the other night, last night, I believe, relationships of like sugars, good sugars in the soil and causing bad blooms. The bad blooms we get from reintroducing bad sugars into our systems, into our gut biome. And, they're very, very similar, very kind of same once you kind of like think, put yourself in, the plant's place, if you will. You kind of
mhm.
go, oh, yeah, it kind of makes sense a little bit.
Yeah.
So
If you're the plant, you see the soil as your most precious underbelly. It's like you see it as like your 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 resource and it's the only thing sustaining you. It's like, if you think about when you get into like a fight, you cover up your body and your face, but like you're really trying to cover up your guts where your microbes are doing their jobs. I think about that all the time when I'm tilling my soil or anything like that. When I'm tearing up the soil, I know that I'm starting over. It's like factory reset in there.
So let me ask you this. I'm kind of curious about, like we talked about, upscaling and organics on a bigger level there. I think most businesses, farms initially had worried about the initial startup and cost of going organic. Does it level out? Does it get cheaper as it goes along to sustain an organic system? I mean, would it if your competitor is in salt, do you have the better advantage? You already talked about a tight market and how hard
Bro,
it is to sustain.
you have you have such an advantage over your salt competitors. It's not even funny. And we can go over all of the reasons why. The onset costs are the biggest deal. So with a living soil grow, you've got to buy beds, a shit ton of soil, and a lot of amendments. That's how you get started. With a salt-based grow, it's a reset cost that you pay every time. So you got to buy new Grodan cubes or cocoa cubes or whatever you're using. And then, but your startup costs are relatively low, which is appealing to investors. So people love salts because it's easy to get started. But as you run through the years, salt guys are really quickly outcompeted by the organic numbers. Um, Salt guys are spending, so for a facility my size, I would have to be spending about, if I got a good deal on liquid fertilizer, I could spend about $1,000 a month on fertilizer. Right now, I think our cost is around an average of about $50. No, including veg room, it's probably about $75 a month on fertilizer. So that's one of the ways we're beating them. But that has to be done with rigorous science. And that's why I'm like a white paper guy, because I'm addicted to like getting the data and translating that into management decisions. So you test your soil, you figure out what it needs, and you put the bare minimum. You don't just throw the same thing at your soil every time. You put the bare minimum so you can hit uh so you can hit way bigger profit margins. And then the other reason you want to hit minimum thresholds is because you get better flavor. Cannabis in general will produce more terpenes under stressful conditions. And so nutrient imbalance is not what I'm talking about here. So you don't want a nutrient imbalance, but nutrient deficiencies can be really beneficial in a living soil system where other minerals are available. So like if the plant has boron and molybdenum and these random small things, it can kind of hobble itself to the finish line with a really high quality product. So although the plant may not be super healthy by the end of your run, even if, when you've done something insufficient, you can still get a really high quality product. With salts, you've got to hit your targets, your ECs, your pH. So it takes labor every week to brew up nutrients, or every feed time. You've got to pay somebody to do that, or do it yourself, or you've got to install a dosatron, and then you've got to have square footage for reservoirs, for water storage and nutrient storage. I don't have any of that shit. I don't mix nutrients. I don't mix water. I fucking have a hose in my grow and I water my soil, and that is it. I don't have a reservoir in this place. I actually collect. It's not true, because I actually have a reservoir. I collect my dehumidifier runoff. I feed part of it to the cows that we have here on the property, and then I collect part of it in tubs outside. So there's lots of ways that you beat them, that you beat the salt guys. And then when the salt guys have a problem, it hits hard, hits quick, and you've got to be light on your feet to be able to resolve those issues. In an organic grow, things happen slower. Not flowering times. Flowering times are genetically programmed, but nutrient deficiencies and imbalances will happen slower. You have more time to react. And guess what? As an organic grower, you have lots of liquid feed options where you can make a quick movement, a quick management decision that will affect your soil quickly. Even though you're an organic soil, you can make some really fast movements and counteract some really slow happening problems. So, and we've actually had problems that we just took to the finish line, that we were just like, oh well, Like, I'm not going to fix it because it's not worth the money. And I think I can get to week 9, and that was part of the phosphorus deficiency issue, was like, yeah, we'll just get there. And we did.
Sometimes you do stumble along some winning recipes in that process, I guess, for sure. So, speaking of like stresses, as far as terpene production, I've always been a firm believer of that, and I never had a lot of success selling that to people. Um, in my case, you could, as far back as you can see any of my grows, which is quite a while, you don't see a whole lot of staking. You don't see the scrog. I've always been a fan of trying to catch it just before it breaks. And I've always believed that stress of just trying to sustain and hold itself up was always, a beneficial thing. But
Absolutely, dude. Absolutely. I mean, that's one of those things that you're not going to sell to somebody who reads white papers only, because they're not going to find that in the literature. Um, you have to kind of, you can't be strictly science, and what a wonderful theme we've created here, like science and spirituality. Like, you really can't just be strictly science. You've got to have an artistic perspective to this whole thing. And part of that is believing things are happening that aren't scientifically proven. Boom, spirituality.
I think that's to be true, very true. And I think that's the recipe that will keep people like yourself ahead of the game and winning in the game, to be honest with you. As I see more and more I was talking about this today, more and more recreational smokers hit the market, what they see for that dollar is it looks good and it smells good, but it doesn't have that heart. And I believe that heart comes from that interaction with the plant that you're talking about, that one-on-one with you. To me, when I work over my plants, I don't go through with direct intention that, today I'm going in and I'm going to defoliate. I'm going to strip that, you know what I mean? I'm going to strip it down. I spin that plant, look at it, kind of feel it out, almost let it talk to
uh
me. This one, that one,
I just got the chills, dude. I just got the chills because, like, that's everything. That's what growers are missing. It's a philosophy of approach. It's like, I walk in my grow, and I'm a professional fucking cannabis grower, and I walk in my grow almost not knowing what I'm going to do that day. I walk in with my cup of coffee, and I go, how you girls doing today? Like, what are we doing today? And I figure out what their needs are that day. And we have a schedule, and we try and do things on schedule, certain defoliations and stuff. So there are times when I come in there with the scissors and a grin on my face, but most of the time I'm in there, it's like, it's a discovery process.
I think 100% what we're talking about is the key ingredient for what we would call a craft market, or what will become a craft market. That
Yeah.
human interaction, I have every bit of confidence that recreation, we can't stop recreation. Unfortunately, and I'm a medical guy. I'm still on the medical side of this thing. I really, in my heart, believe the power of why we started this. You know what I mean? Because, like I said, I'm evolving. You're evolving. And as we, get older and more honest about why we use this plant, we can see the medical benefits in it. And the more you get into dealing with the plant, it shows you that. So to see it, say it doesn't have medical and it's recreational, it's completely, it is what it is. But the message is being lost in that process.
The message is, but there's an access point now for under recreational conditions. There's like an access point for people to discover their medicinal use of cannabis, because I think everybody will. If you're smoking weed and you're 17, or you're 19 or you're 25 and you're just thinking you're having a good time, guess what, buddy? You're self-medicating. You know, you just don't know it yet.
I agree with that. I agree with that. But I think that again, I think that let the lesser interactions that the big companies have, or more so the vibe they get off of, because not necessarily the people that are working at a lot of these large scale growers are the folks that help teach the industry to grow. You know what I mean? It's a low paying job. It's not necessarily the rich and the famed a lot of people would hope for it. And once it comes to being just a job and people show up to do what they got to do, that vibe they put off, God, I can't wait till it's Friday. That's the plant's feeding off of that. The plant's feeding off
Oh,
of what
hell yeah.
we're doing today. Let's play.
Yes.
That's a key ingredient. When it becomes to, I don't want to be here, the plant's feeding off of that as well. And that's
So,
heartless.
you know
Hold
what
on.
it,
I
oh,
want
yeah,
to,
yeah.
this is personal experience. So I've grown amazing cannabis. All right, I like to think, okay, I've grown amazing cannabis over the years. There was a portion of my life where the last few years pre-reset where things weren't going that great. The flower I produced looked good and everything else, but it did not have the same thing that it always had. It was feeding off of, you know what I mean? And I
Oh,
think
yeah.
that is a huge part of, what will be craft cannabis. And I think, all right, and I guess, all right, this is a like exciting question. So if opportunity arose where you were, I undoubtedly think that you would participate in, like, say, both markets. Would you know what I mean? Keeping product on the shelf at your local dispensaries, but I think you would. Would your heart be at the farmers market, letting everybody, you know what I mean, that fresh, take a smell of this is what I think I don't know. I don't. It's. I think you would. Is that a correct assessment? Would you? No.
It
You
would,
have
I think it
time
would
for
take some
that.
getting used to, but you know, I experienced a recreational market in California a little bit, and it was like, it was so, I don't want to say fake, but like,
You can say fake. Please say fake,
it was
because
so, like, it was still really like illegal still. Like, even though it was recreational, it was fakely recreational. Like, people were getting arrested for growing too many plants and going to jail. Dude, I moved out of California, and I told you this story before, but just for listeners that didn't hear that, I left California. Right before I left California, I had the city I was in, or county I was in, El Dorado County, said, go ahead and plant up to a 600 square foot garden. I did that. And then they said, oh, actually, you can only have 6 plants. So I said, fuck you. And I moved my wife and my daughter to my mother in law's house, her mother's house. And I finished the season up there. And then we bought land in Oklahoma and got out. So there's the, there's some good and some bad from the recreational market. You have like a new access point for new users, and but you've got like this quasi legal reality of it where it's not actually like what everybody thinks is recreational. If you're not in a recreational state, it actually isn't so good. And if you go to a recreational state, the weed sucks. And maybe at the root of it is what Eagle is talking about here is people growing it that don't care. Anti-craft. Oh, you're muted.
The only thing we've done in the last few years is uh, usher in another generation of uh, posers, basically. Fakes. And that's the money, people. That's the it's
Right.
you know what I mean. The overhead costs. I don't smoke cannabis. It's nothing but a number for me and overhead, and that's when it becomes, I guess, you have to meet this, and that's business. That's the sad part of business. You have to meet this number to survive. But when it comes to profits are included in that number instead of, uh, it's harder. You know what I
You
mean?
know,
It's
you're right. Every good business has somebody who doesn't give a shit about money, and then somebody who like is worried about the money. And I'm the person who doesn't care about money. We get like 4, 5 runs a year max when because I run the flower room with really long flowering shit. And Shannon's like, "Why are you doing this?" You know, my wife, she's like, "Why are you doing this?" Like we could get 6 runs a year if you were fat if you were running 9 week strains. And it's like because I believe in something. It's hard to explain, but I really do, and that's what we're trying to bring to the market, and that's it's defines craft. I think you're right.
so. What else has been new? I know. How has any of your grow techniques changed since the last time we talked? Has life changed in general? What else is going on? Again, a lot of things that I appreciate you, brother, isn't just cannabis. It's the off-grid lifestyle. It's the gump to fucking move to another state with your family and fucking start all over. I got okay, I do. So what else? What's going on with, what's new?
It's we've been fine tuning some stuff. Just to answer your question about the grow. Um, we've definitely set some really serious like SOPs up to where now I'm doing consultations. I've started helping other grows in the area. So we've got like a side business doing that. Um, our everything is like way more well oiled now than the last time we talked. Everything just like moves and just goes. Everybody knows their place and everything's always turning. Um, we've got a son now. I don't think he was born the last time we talked. He just turned 1.
That is fucking amazing.
Thank you. It is. It's really cool. So got a little girl, she's 4, and a little boy. We've got 3 Texas Longhorn cows. They're a lot of fun. Um, and we have a vegetable garden. We have 3 dogs. We've got a guest camper on the property for friends to stay in. Um, we snagged a dispensary license. So we're going to do something really special. We're going to build a dispensary on our land here in the middle of nowhere in Binger, Oklahoma. And we are going to invite people for like a different experience than a traditional dispensary where you come and get sort of like the ATG experience and um, maybe even get to tour the grow and do some other really cool things. We're thinking about some agritourism on the property. So it'd be really cool. And then um yeah, lots of little things, little girls in T-ball and everything's just going. How about you?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well. We already covered me or my
Yeah,
update.
I have no choice. We only talk when we get on, so I always want to find out what's going on with you.
I'm guilty of that. I can be guilty of that.
We're all busy.
Life's been good. No complaints. No complaints. I do I appreciate the garden thing. I've kind of I have a lot of cannabis dreams. I just seen in Flint, Michigan. I was down Flint, Michigan today. I traveled down to take care of some stuff and head back this way. But the local big mall there, the Genesee Valley, I had heard was closing, and I thought that's a monster piece of property. It would be amazing if like that became like and Flint needs something anyway. If somebody, I mean, it's a big mall too. It'd be nice to see like a grow smoke place. You know what I mean? Different smoke bars, maybe places. People like myself that had studio space in there doing cannabis interviews or whatever, and just be fine. You
That's
know, make a
cool.
little cannabis mecca. I think would be super fucking cool. But one of the other things I've kind of kicked around in my head is a lot what you're talking about because I was a few weeks ago, today too. I was kind of traveling through the country and where I moved. I used to live a couple moves before I come up here, which was towards Owasso, Durand area, which is a lot of
Mm,
farm country, and they've got a lot
mhm.
of orchards through there. And one of the orchards there used to have the old petting the animals, and you could go through the orchard. And what you kind of, I'm hoping, referring to it is kind of like that old uh, apple cider mill experience where could go through and pick some apples and cannabis would work different, but at the end you could still this is the cannabis that grew in our fields. Kind of it
Trim your
sounds
own buds. Dude, that's one of the ideas is like, you come through, you trim your own buds, you you have like I'd like to like set up like small houses on the property. We've got 12 acres, so I'd like to set up some houses and stuff. But all this shit, you know, I I don't take investors. Like
I
we
don't blame
are, yeah.
don't blame.
Yeah, no, we're not about that fucking shareholder bullshit. Like we own our business outright, we own our land outright, and we intend to keep it that way, but we want to build something really special, but the only way to do that and to keep it special is to do it yourself. So it's going to take forever. But we'll get there eventually and we'll have you out. We'll do some special episodes or something.
Man, I hope, brother, that dream comes true. That'd be
Thank you.
completely awesome to see something
Yeah.
like that. And moreover, another kind of like attached, I can attach something to your dream. This is what I'd like to attach to your dream because this is something else I seen today, as a matter of fact, through my drive through the country, and that's the Centennial Farm sign. And it'd be awesome. All right, so we talk about the model that we're talking about, but we're talking about a Centennial Farm. It's something you pass down to your kids, possibly their kids, but it can't. You know what I mean? But it's still the apple
Legacy,
orchard.
bro. That's yeah.
You know what I mean? It's still the cider mill. You know what I mean? You keep the doors open, and yeah, yeah. That I hope 1,000% that comes true for you, brother. Seriously.
Yeah, that's the hope. And I just feel like I made a meme once. It was I don't know if you ever seen this photo of the kid holding a gun and crying. It's like a 3-year-old kid holding like a 9mm pistol, like at the ground, just crying, like he's scared. And I put words over it. I said, when I hand my farm to my child, because it is such a fucking headache. And if you aren't absolutely in love with it, then you're not going to be able to keep your vision clear and push. And I would never want to hand something to my kids that they didn't want. But I hope that they take to it. But that being said, I have a really strong feeling that actually what's going to happen is the conglomeration of the cannabis grows in Oklahoma, which is where 5 to 10 major grows come in and they say, hey, we'll buy your grow for XY. Or you say no, obviously, right? You say no, and then they send you, every possible, like, they try and get you in trouble, right? They try and like send it in, inspectors and investigators. They say you're doing things wrong. They try and sue you out of business. They try and screw you. And we're well aware of that potential. So if something happens and there's a huge conglomeration in Oklahoma and we have to sell our business in order to save face, do that. And we'll just let everybody know. Like, don't buy from ATG Acres anymore. It's Monsanto. But no, we never sell to any wrongdoers. We'd sooner go to the grave. But it's just, you got to stay flexible with a business like this. And it's so up in the air. Everything is so wishy-washy. The politicians can't figure out how much money they want to pull out of my pocket this month. So they don't know if I'm going to stay in business next month.
That's the dirty truth right there. Sad but
Yeah.
true that is. But I'm hoping in the same aspect that you're still wearing that cowboy mentality to where you're blazing the trail that by the time you're said and done and ready to put your pistols away, that you've made quite a easy path for the next generation, and
Well
you,
said.
you're so I think there's a lot to that. I think you'll follow that mentality. You've done it thus far for sure. So yeah, that'd be
Yeah, I'm
cool.
still an outlaw in the back of my mind. Like, I don't know. The more they crack down, the more I want to just convert this facility into a 18 plant medical facility and just do what I used to do. You know what I mean?
Sadly, man, doing living life on your terms, off the grid, kind of the way you are. You are. That is outlaw these days. They want, they
Yeah.
want you to subscribe to the system and be dependent and all that good stuff. So you pretty much kind of are still wearing the outlaw hat a little bit. I'm gonna do it my way.
Much as I can, brother. Much as I can.
So, do
Shit.
you see yourself ever expanding into a bigger, larger scale? And I guess have they changed their mind on the unlimited plant count? I mean, can you like if
Yeah,
you
they
want
changed
to?
they changed their mind. Yeah.
Ah,
They rewrote it. Now it's uh 10,000 square feet is the first tier, which is huge, right? Like, that's massive. But they've tiered it now, and it's costs more to do bigger ones. Yeah, I would expand. In fact, I kind of need to. Like, I really need to produce. Oh shit, my bowl is still lit. Oh shit, hang on.
nice.
You set your lighter on top of your bowl, and like you think it goes out, but the wind is running through my truck, so just lit up. I thought, good thing my lighter didn't explode. Anyway, I think we will expand. Like, I need to be producing more weed. Um, Trying to partner up with some other grows and just be a partner of ones that already exist and bring my SOPs. We've got one in the works, but it's kind of like, it's been 2 seasons now. We're letting it kind of, the partners have kind of let it slip through their fingers. So, but yeah, dude, that would be a really good piece of advice I would offer to anybody getting into the industry is make sure you stay versatile. Make sure you like have more than one way to make money. You can't just rely on growing weed or farming in general, dude. Farming is crazy. Anything could go wrong tomorrow and just ruin your crop. So just make sure you got. We also sell seeds. Oh, that's something dude. Did I tell you about did
No,
did I find? Oh my god, dude, we have something to talk about.
let's talk.
So So I put out. I had heard from a friend that Oklahoma had landrace hemp growing in the ditches in certain places. So I put out an APB. I think that's the abbreviation. Said to all my people in Oklahoma, and I said, I need to find this ditch weed wherever it is. Show me all the places you found it. And nobody really showed me anywhere. But the fucking weed gods, because this is the theme, it's the spirituality. 2 weeks later, I get a blurry photo from my contractor, and anybody can go on my Instagram and look at my highlight reels under hemp, wild hemp. You'll see all these photos. This whole story is all there. It's a blurry photo of clearly like a weed plant, and I was like, "Take me there." So then, and it was nighttime, but he the next day, his son took me out there, and it was across the street from his place. And it was this massive property, like a few hundred acres. And we go down to the field, and we're both expecting just to see just one or two plants or whatever. As soon as we get over the first hill, tens of thousands of wild hemp that had been naturally selected for on this wild farmland over the last like 50 or 60 years, growing just wild. I started losing my mind, dude. I was like, and you can see, like, we took some videos and shit. I was like, this is the shit dreams are made of. I was losing my mind. This unreal discovery. So, and they were just starting to flower. So I just went around the field. I was smelling everything. I grabbed my favorite male, chopped the top of the plant off, walked over to my favorite females, and just started dusting them. I came back in October, and I harvested probably like 20 or 30,000 seeds. And so this was 2 years ago, I think. Yeah, it's 2 years ago now. Going into 2 years ago that I made this discovery. And collected those seeds, brought them back, sorted them. I did I did a pheno selection. So I did perps, because dude, the field had purple hemp. It had hemp that smelled like haze. Had big bud, like larger bud hemp. It had some of the hemp had grasshoppers all over it and no grasshopper damage. So it was like pest resistant too. And there was cows in this field, and the cows weren't eating it. So I separated out all the seeds, and I started giving them out and selling them. And I planted a bunch of them, and I had a male hemp plant that I grew, and I crossed it to some of my drug type varieties, our traditional DHC type, Indiana bubblegum, Anthony Bourdain from Seattle Chronic Seeds, and Sunset McMac and Exoneration. And we started growing those out. So now it's been, a couple of generations since this project all started, and we're running testers of those crosses, and the results have been really nice. Everybody's loving it. They're longer flowering, they're narrow leaf, more sativa, land racy. The Indiana bubblegum has nice strawberries in it. It's really good stuff. I'll have to send you some seeds. And so the discovery of that hemp has actually blossomed a relationship with Skunk Magazine. I just signed a contract with Skunk Magazine. I'm going to be a writer, a seed producer, an exclusive Oklahoma skunk flower producer, and we're going to make our own strain called Oklahoma Skunk. We're going to breed my No Hope dope, which is what I call this wild hemp. We're going to breed my No Hope dope crosses to their traditional skunk. and we're gonna do something really special with that. So we're gonna breed like more robustness into your traditional skunk. And then writing for them is a dream come true. So it's like this is basically just the biggest thing that's ever happened in my life. So I'm very grateful to them and everything they've brought forth. We're doing a collaboration with Purple Caper Seeds. He's Caper Purple on Instagram. Frank is a really great guy, friend of mine. He hooked me up with skunk and made all this happen. And now we're doing a huge triple collaboration with all these different genetics. And so I guess a lot's happened since we talked last.
I shall say, my friend, that's fucking awesome and well deserved, man, all the way
Thanks,
around.
dude. Thanks.
You know,
It
so how another thing of breeding, aspect of cannabis to keep you enticed. That's kind of what I'm saying here, brother, is like our evolution with cannabis. It seems like every time you think you've hit a plateau and things may start to seem like work, she finds another way to draw you in and make you fascinated with it.
dude, all roads lead back to cannabis. That's what I always say. You can stray, but you can't go far. If she is your destiny, then there is no other script that can be written. It is what it is.
So what do you think that the actual is it? I mean, both sides. Is it hemp? I mean, actually, the strains you produce in there, or is it hemp influenced kind of cannabis?
We're trying to weed out the more hempy stuff. So anything that you know starts out really narrow leaf and smells like the hemp. The hemp has a very particular smell, most of it, other than the haze. Um, so we're trying to weed those out. The way that I'm doing this is like I'm hunting by planting stuff outside, so subjecting it to like the harshness. So I want those certain traits that come from hemp, but I want it in only, the THC dominant frosty varieties.
I have. I'm a huge fan of outdoor breeding for multiple reasons. Mainly the hardiness of the plant.
Mm-hmm.
We referenced DNA earlier on, and I believe the plant has its own DNA as it goes through the life cycles. Throughout the season, I believe it does somewhat make epigenetic changes to the plant and what it wants to offer to the next
Absolutely.
generation. And I think indoor breeding, the perfect environments that we provide through breeding practices, I think we're setting ourselves up for like a banana incident where, the simple
Dude,
is gonna just
you fucking hit it on the head. I couldn't have said it any better. Like we're setting ourselves up for, and we're already seeing it. Some of our favorite strains to grow indoors, like Gorilla Glue or Super Silver Haze or something like that. Um, you put them outside and they get clobbered. They get absolutely clobbered in most places. Shut up, California. We know you have perfect weather. Everywhere else, they get clobbered. Um, so that's the result of epigenetic and genetic selection from indoor breeding. Because if you're staking your plants anyway, and you're gently blowing on them with wind and not ever hitting them with a locust swarm or whatever, like you're creating you're as you said earlier, you're creating a generation of posers, and that's what we're creating in the genetics.
it's true. It's true. Um, but I believe it's going to be very necessary. I think we're limiting in that, we're limiting the pheno selection in general. The environmental
Yeah,
stresses is new things in them. So why would we want to limit that? It's crazy. More tools in the toolbox is you kind of suppose.
Exactly. Why would we want to diminish, the things the plant does for itself that help us too? Um, so I wanted to see if I'm not watching the chat or anything, but I wanted to see if, like, I gotta go soon, but I wanted to see if anybody had any questions at all about anything before I get off. I don't know. I thought that might be cool to do.
Right on. Any questions for Aaron and what he's doing currently? Uh, More than welcome. You've done this way too long. You got the bit of a delay there for sure. But
Yeah. Yeah,
I
no worries.
appreciate the collections of playing more of a longer term flower. Getting, I get my chance to run with you a little bit. That's another thing that I'm hoping will come out of the craft market, people wanting to grow. People like myself that used to grow on more of a larger scale for their medical needs and stuff. Used to have to, or we would go naturally choose a quicker flowering time. And I think as more we're not so worried about trying to make a living in the cannabis industry, I think we'll get back to taking that chance and growing more long-term flowers for ourselves, if not one in the corner. And then through that process, I think we're going to unlock a new craze to where like sativa's going to come back big to where it didn't
Dude,
pay before.
you are actually predicting the future for a fact because that's happening to me right now. And this is the thing I missed about the organic growing thing. Just to jump back to it, you said, how do we beat the salt guys? We get a higher dollar value. So not only do we spend less money on growing it, we get more money for the product because it's a higher quality. People respect that higher quality and they respect like the what it takes to be sustainable and all of the things that go into organic growing.
All right, so first question, Dave in St. Louis. How many outdoor grows would it take to adjust to the outside environment?
So I think it depends on what you start with, um, very much, but you're not gonna see the kinds of what happens is you're not going to see epigenetics play as big of a role in your breeding career as you would have seen over the course of 100 million plants being bred around the world simultaneously, um, which is actually what's happened. Is it's a fast track because everybody's trying to do the same thing. So in that respect, when you're talking about things changing, really what you're doing is you're planting 20 seeds and selecting the one that's the strongest. And that one then you're breeding with again. That's not epigenetics, that's just genetic selection. Epigenetics would be like, well, I had this plant that wasn't doing so well, but it adapted, and that adaptation was then passed along to its progeny, and you would have to do like all kinds of testing to figure out if it were an epigenetic episode or if it were like true or if it were just genetic selection, which is 99% of the time we're just genetic selecting. So like everybody around the world hunting the same cookies, forum cookies, you know brought brought a finished product to market much quicker, because it was selected for everywhere, and only the best of those 100 million survived, made it to the burner's studio.
Mr. Chad Westport has a good question for you as well. He's the biggest learning moment from designing your own grow room slash facility.
Shout out, Chad. Appreciate the question. Um, uh, it would be in regards to scaling up living soil, which is something, we talked about earlier, but it's oof. It's realizing that every little thing needs attention. Um, we made so many mistakes, but one thing we did well was outfit proper dehumidification in the flower room. So 99% of your home growers are going to build a commercial facility that doesn't have proper dehumidification because they're not ready for how much more moisture is produced by that many more plants and in a commercial setting with supplemental CO2 and in living soil, which is always more moist and producing more moisture. So dehumidification in the flower room is probably the number one thing you want to pay attention to.
I think, I don't know if there's any more questions. I didn't see any more questions yet in chat, but I have a few. One of them pertaining to catching or reusing the water from your dehumidifiers. Are you worried about any kind of pathogens? Are you treating it at all before you give it back to the plants?
Great question. I don't treat it and I don't give it back to my indoor garden. I give it to my cows. I put it in my cow trough for the cows. It just automatically fills the cow trough. They drink it faster than it fills it though, so I have to supplement regular water in there. But I purchased one of the reasons I purchased Quest dehumidifiers was because they have coated coils, so they have everything that the water collects on is non-metallic, and so um their the water that comes out of those machines is really really low in heavy metals compared to like Anden, which is an absolutely wonderful machine. It's an equivalent to Quest, I would say. They do a wonderful job, but their coils are not coated, and so the heavy metals can be a little higher, especially over time. As you collect that water.
Again, I don't see any more, but my
It's all good.
question would be uh, about the CO2. I've been back and forth, and we talk about CO2 when to put it in. You know what I mean? Most growers hear CO2, CO2, and I think they implement it as part of their grow sometimes a little bit too early. That they haven't necessarily mastered their maximum output of what they can do or mastering their environment for the light they have or whatever. Is there a sweet spot for when to introduce? When is your advice to properly for the home grower or anybody to introduce CO2? And do you have? I heard you like 1,500, but we're down it back. What's your sweet spot for CO2 once everything else is in check?
So for us, introducing CO2 can only happen when everything else is perfect. And so that usually happens when we transition clones from the veg room to the flower room. And so we'll veg them in the flower room for 10 weeks, 10 days to 2 weeks. And during that time, we'll start at about 600 ppm CO2. If the plants are really healthy, I'll go a little higher, like 750. If everything's really banging, or if they're larger plants, if they're maybe a foot and a half tall, I'll go a little higher, like 750. And then so when they flip, it basically follows the PPFD of your light schedule to a T. So like they need to be correlated, because if your lights aren't high, you're wasting CO2. And if your CO2 is too high, you're driving the system too hard. So you basically start at about 700 at your max, and then climb up. And as they flip into flower, keep climbing. You're going to get up to, all right, if you're your average home grower and you're looking to supplement CO2 and you have a CO2 monitor and you have some way to introduce CO2 into your system, let me just say you're miles ahead of the game, and you're probably going to not still want to go higher than about 1,000 parts per million of CO2, because you're going to start to see deficiencies in your plants. But if you really want to play with fire, you can push it as high as 1,500 parts per million and see how good your nutritional balance really is. And how high you got to make sure light intensity is gonna be on there with it. So like 1,000-watt light or higher, 1,000-watt HPS, but 1,000-watt LED is what we run. But we don't run them at 1,000 watts. We start them at about, like when I introduce plants into the flower room, the lights are at about 550 watts, and I crank that up to like at the most 875, 900, I think is the highest I've gone at about the peak of flower. So like week 7. And then after week 7, CO2 and lighting, we start to trail that down 6 or 7, 8, depending on how long the strain runs. Start to trail that CO2 and light down together, bringing it back down to about, in our setting, we go down to about 1,000. At the end, we're at like 900. We actually cut CO2 off for the last week of flower to force senescence. But before that, we're getting it down to like, those numbers. And then, your PPFD should trail off too. So when your peak light, and then you come down for the last 2 weeks, come down about 150 watts over the course of two weeks, 200 watts if you've gone really high on the wattage. And that's in essence, that like light and CO2 cycle drives the system. So your nutritional balance will follow as long as it's available. It'll climb and it'll decrease. That decrease in nutrition forces senescence, which brings your color, your flavor, and your cannabinoid production.
All right. 5 more questions if you got time.
Hit it. Let's do it.
So, to complicate matters, for one, I think light's one of those key ingredients that I don't think. All right, we're back to not one of the key ingredients we have to master before necessarily introducing CO2, or because I think a lot of either providing enough light to need that CO2, or aren't utilizing it properly. And then at this point, I wanna get your opinion, because I've talked to a show friend, basically Joe Pietri, which is kind of put out the idea of the only way a lot of growers at basically your kind of scale is gonna be to survive is, well, organics is definitely one, but to shave all electricity costs, and he proposes by doing that, running the 12 and 1 in veg and only like an 8-9 hour max flower time or light cycle for flower, because basically at he argues the fact, show me any flowering seed pack that tells you that the flower needs more than 8 hours of solid light. And this is where my conundrum goes with like the now more powerful lights like the LEDs and stuff like that, man, they are pushing out a lot. So this is where I like to complicate this with. I've done a lot of time lapse videos. I was blessed early on in my grower mid career to get to do some light work, and part of those deals were doing time elapse videos. And going back and watching those time elapse videos, there was most certainly times you could see during the day cycle where that plant was done long before the light shut off. So I kind of always wondered, why am I still kind of pushing her? So with that being said, in flower or whatever, I mean, what is your, is it, and I mean, Smiley's talked about this a lot too. So with that being said, that the plant's only going to take in so much before it shuts down, and now it's more of a stress for the plant. Is it better to give that plant a nice walk, jog through the day so it's constantly healthy and not, not feeling the stress of, or is it better to pound that motherfucker and just give it more heal time? You know what I
Um,
mean?
it's a good
Or
point, but
can
so
that
let me
extra
comment on the.
stressor, let me one more. Could that be
Oh
an
yeah,
extra stressor that has a positive effect in flower? Taking it past that time it would normally be. Could that be a positive effect, or could it be? He
I
claims
don't think it's a
flower
stress.
side it provides more weight and higher terpene production. Could that be?
Well,
Again, I'm looking. You're a
I could
smart dude.
say I
I'm
could
hoping.
say this, like, your average tomato plant doesn't need 16 hours of light, but will it do better with proper water and nutrition? Will it put out more tomatoes? Yes, it will. We know that. So it's the same for cannabis. Yes, there's diminishing returns though. So at some point you're investing too much to get something out of it. And but there are certain things that aren't super expensive. Like CO2. CO2 is really pretty cheap. Lighting is expensive, but when if you want a lot of tomatoes, you want a lot of light. And although there are diminishing returns as you climb up the PPFD scale, so like the more light you give your plants, the less bud, the less grams per watt you're going to get, but you're going to get a higher quality product, um, which obviously goes in direct contradiction to what he says. But um, I I only have my boots on the ground to tell me, I when we grew outdoor weed and we would have I actually planted an entire uh in-ground bed under a big oak tree. Half of it was shaded, half of it was exposed because I wanted to test like light stress. Um Well, not because I wanted to test light stress, but I used that opportunity it was the only space available, but I used that opportunity to test light stress. And dude, the plants that were shaded for 3 hours a day, um, had single leaf production instead of 3 and 5 leaf production. They had spindlier buds, like way larfier weed. The terp production was fire, yes, just like everything else in the garden. Everything had nice terp production, and good cannabinoid production. It got you really stoned and was special. But definitely, like the stuff that got the more light was denser, um, had tighter internodal spacing, and had way higher yields. So I don't know. Are we trying to find the bottom threshold or the top threshold, I guess, of quality, right? What's in minimum inputs, we have to be careful because in minimum inputs in soil, that's too simple of a thing that's actually happening. There's actually really dynamic, complex things producing lots of compounds in the soil, but we are adding less. So it's too simple to really to say less inputs, especially when it comes to all of the other things that have to do with growing. You know, you really want to shave off any edge that anybody else might have on you. You want to grow the best quality product. And that's going to be doing every little thing. And if it means, and by the way, in veg, I have plants, I have some Mac, like 3 or 4 Mac crosses that will straight up flower under anything less than 18 hours of light, like 16 hours of light, flowering. So I try not to play with that. Like I'm like, I keep it at 18.6 and they seem happy and that keeps me happy.
I can see that, again, quality, that's a funny subject. I have tried the 12-in-1 process myself. I haven't completed a flower under the like that less of a light cycle. 12-in-1. I appreciated the 12-in-1. The only downside I noticed was that trigger was a little bit was not the trigger in my females, it was the trigger in my males I had in house.
Mm.
They didn't like the 12-in-1 and triggered easier, but
Males
females seem to be okay.
males will just fucking flower when the wind blows. Think about men too, right? Like we're just like, yeah, let's go when we turn 15, we're like, yeah. Like that's them too. They're just like, under any sort of stress, they're flipping a flower. And I've got plants in my I've got like 7 male plants in my vegetable garden right now that none of the females are flowering. All of the males are flowering. I just threw up like 6 little compact fluorescent lights to throw them back into veg and get them back on track. It's crazy. The males do that, dude. It's wild.
So kind of just, and again, this is just my opinion only, and I guess perspective is key too. What I'd be trying to judge on, you know, but my quality is one of those things in my mind right now. Still, again, the cannabis is medicine, even more so than ever. So
Mm-hmm.
something that had a wider bouquet of terpenes and stronger terpenes. I think we and you both know that's a key part of the medicine that the white papers aren't backing yet. I think if anything, um, the stupid and again, no, I'm not trying to offend you in any way. The white papers, the chase for numbers is gonna be somewhat, a downfall for that. I think the higher the
Yeah.
numbers, we've all seen this. THC isn't the one we're looking for, the one and only. It's causing anxiety. It's pushing away people that are coming back and trying this cannabis that has a higher THC content. It's causing anxiety, and we're sending them packing. It's more
Yeah.
things, the lower THC content, the higher terpene, the higher quality, but less THC that you referred to in the like shade area there. And to me, that's quality. That's medicine. It hits more of the numbers than, that tighter bud, which we would call quality on the commercial side, because X, Y, and Z, it's got weight. You know what I mean? It takes us a little bit further in the market, but that doesn't necessarily, it takes us further into medicine.
Yeah. Yeah, dude. It's the entourage effect that we're after. We're after you know, like all of the compounds. And that's what's so great about organic gardening is there are things we don't that science doesn't it doesn't offend me at all, dude, because I poo poo the science quicker than anybody because I'm knee deep in it and I'm like, well, this is like 10% of actually what's happening. The science is only 10%. But um yeah, the organic soil has really dynamic production of minerals and things that we don't even measure in a soil test. And those have a particular impact on the plant, which we're not measuring and have no way to measure, and are producing a, a more dynamic profile of terpenes. So it's like organic soil has more dynamic like exudate, like things that come out of the soil in an organic system are there's more things than in a synthetic system, and that lends itself to the cannabis plant producing more things than in a synthetic system, I think.
I believe that's 100% true. 100% true. So with that being said, beds are pots, man. I mean, we're talking about organics, and
Beds.
you know what I mean? Is that, but I think you're right.
Beds because the thing that we the reasons are so weird, but like so like water is the most important thing in an organic soil, and maintaining consistent moisture is the most important thing in the life cycle of the plant. And that's really hard to do with a pot. It's much easier to do. It's challenging because you can't tell what parts of the pot are dry from the top. And in a bed, you don't have to tell because it dries evenly because it's massive. And then the temperature. So like if I lose power in my grow and it's, let's say it's 10 degrees outside and it gets down to 50 degrees in my grow over the course of like a couple of days with the power off, my soil is going to be 65 degrees. It's a thermal mass. It is like a slab of concrete keeping my plants warm or cold if it gets too hot. Um, so for those reasons, and then also there's like, um, you really want to give microbes and mycelium the chance to establish. And so for that reason, we like to till as little as possible. And when you're potting into pots, you have no choice but to till most of that. Even if you'd only pull out the root mass and put into that space, you're still going to till that immediate surrounding. And then you're changing the the microclimate for those microorganisms in that surrounding area. And so you're shifting everything when you're in pots more often. And in a bed, everything just kind of goes on and on and on.
Well, you've kind of hit a couple of things that yeah, I think are super important to talk about. And where one is, I feel that where people struggle the most in organics is that's fucking watering. You
Mm-hmm.
know, I think they try to water for the plant and they don't keep in mind the balance that's going on under the soil. You know, washing out some enzymes or bacteria causing bad negative spots in there. You know, it's a fine line. Are you watering for the environment and the soil to be peak, or are you trying to water that plant and have it obscene? And that's a toughie right there. But I again, like when we kind of talk back, you know, about the plan and being it better and better, I think what I've learned in the last year of talking with like a lot of awesome minds like yourself when it comes to organics is it's keeping that life cycle going, and you know the for the adapt to what the cannabis plants that you're growing cycle after cycle, as you kind of
And
referred,
they
like it needed the ones that were lighter on the phosphorus and needed more phosphorus. I think you run in that bed constantly. Again, you're gonna find bacterias and stuff that are gonna peak out that terpene profiles, you know, for them in particular plants. And, you know, like you're saying, that engine's going to be tuned
mhm.
for that. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
that's
You can't
exactly
really,
right.
it takes too long to get that truck running right, that diesel warmed up, right?
Yeah. That is so well said, dude. Yeah. I always think about soil as an engine. You know, actually the whole grow I think about as like a car. And and I've made many like parallels, you know. But the whole system has to run um, together, just like an engine, or even a car. There's so many different parts, and um, living soil just makes it so that there is more fuel available, more clean fuel. That makes sense.
It does. It does.
Well, I better hit it.
Yeah, I'm blessed. You said I could squeeze you an hour. You gave me two, so thank you very much. That bonus time, my friend. And
Well,
hopefully
it's
we
always
can
a
do this
pleasure.
a little bit sooner, man. It seems way too long, and too many good things have happened without me catching them. And I don't like being so far off the radar, I guess.
Uh,
Are the seats available now, or is that, in the future
well,
thing?
we sold out of. I actually do have some more Anthony Bourdain crosses. So I have the No Hope Dope cross with Anthony Bourdain. We're doing them for $40 for 30 seeds, um, shipped. Um, and then you can hit my website for that. I, I don't think I have them on the website. You'll have to send me a DM. I think I have the wild hemp available. I'm doing 40 seeds for $40 on the wild hemp, just to cover costs of collection and stuff. But those I have on the website. You can place that on the website, or you can just DM me for the other ones. I'll send you some of the Anthony Bourdain crosses. Send me an address
I
when we get
will.
off.
Oh,
And
how did not to cut you off, brother, but I
oh
just
no, sorry.
the last time we talked, the clone shipper, I believe, was how'd that end up working out? Did I
We
get
had
available?
not
Question
available.
mark.
We we had we had a company make them. They fucked. Like not make ours. They stole our idea and made their own. And so we just, it wasn't my bread and butter in the first place. It was just something fun. But then it was like everybody was using those. They were way cheaper. They were like made out of really thin plastic. And it's like, well, those work. Fuck it. Like somebody else found a better solution, I guess. But they took our lights, and they fucking did a bunch of other shit. But it's all good. I only brought that to market because I thought it was a good idea, not because I wanted
It
to make
was a fucking good idea. That's what it was a fucking great.
money.
Obviously,
Thanks,
they
dude.
stole it, bro. They
Yeah.
fucking.
I was this close to having a good product, but what we were using to produce it was heavy duty, so that like you could throw it against the wall and not fuck your clone up. But the way they're making it is cheaper, and most people don't have problems with their clones getting thrown against the wall. But we tried to market it after they came out of like if you really care about your genetics, you'll use these because you can, they're not going to get fucked up. And if it costs somebody, we sell genetics at $150 a strain. And I ship clones, by the way. I do sell clones. Any strain you see other than stuff we work with skunk on is available. You can hit me on the DM and I ship them for $150. But if you're spending that much on a clone, you probably want to make sure it's not going to die. So, but we actually guarantee. So, like, if we have had clones die in the mail, male people are shit. So, we just send another one.
All right, man. So, where did I rudely interrupt
Oh,
you there?
I was filling air, dude. I don't know. I was just going, bah, I'm glad you took over.
Well, man, I do hope that it has been a great update, man. You deserve all that shit for real, brother. As much good shit as you put out, and even with the clone thing, you know what I mean? It's probably better diverted your attention into more amazing things. And obviously, you've got more good shit coming, and I hope more good shit happens, brother. I got a lot, I said it in the beginning, I'll say it again. I got a lot of respect for you, and I wish you nothing but the best. The only thing
Thank
I
you.
wish to get from you before we part, brother, I gotta find it, is I still do them. It's been forever since I got to do one because I've been
I
on hiatus
forgot.
one on one. Is the soundbite. It is currently 838. If you could give me your soundbite, I am ready for that.
I forgot what I forgot what I'm supposed to say. I forgot.
It's been too see, it's been too long.
Dude,
Basically, what I'm looking
I can't
for,
remember what I ate for breakfast yesterday. So
something along the lines of, hey, this is Aaron the Grower, and I'm on fucking Talking Shit with Eagle. Episode 838. You put whatever you want before or after that. If you could give me that much, I'd be super grateful.
fuck yeah. All right. You are watching fucking Talking Shit with Eagle with ATG Acres. I'm Aaron the Grower. We're on here with number 838. That's 8,300,000, 8 billion episodes. That's a real number. This is a real soundbite.
Yeah. Awesome, brother. And again, let's do this again real soon. And thank you, brother.
Thank you, man. I really appreciate what you do for the community. And, I definitely want to stay connected. We'll do this again as soon as possible.